Hey, I've got some great news to share with you today, especially if you're in the market for a mobile cell phone signal booster for your motorhome or trailer or truck camper. Now, WeBoost just released RV specific package around the very popular and top performing Drive Reach booster that came out in May of 2019. So this isn't a new booster, but it's been performing very, very well. And a lot of us have been transitioning over to using this one. But the problem has been that they haven't had an RV specific release for this. When they released it last May in 2019, it was a vehicle version. So it came with very small antennas for a very small vehicle. And in order to use it in the RV, we've had to add additional antennas to it and probably grab some more cabling and adapters and all this stuff to get it all hooked up. Now that has added a little bit of extra expense to the overall bill, and now we don't have to do that because everything's all included in this RV package called the Drive Reach RV. This will most likely replace the Drive X RV package that came out in 2019, in the fall of 2019, as the one to get if you're wanting to install something in your RV. They sent me this pre-production release of this package to try out. Let's get into it, show you how the system works, how to set it up, and also want to answer some questions that I get all the time about boosters in general and how effective are they. Questions about antenna placement and range and even 5G. So I want to get into that. Maybe I'll hit on a topic that you're interested in that'll help you decide if this is something that you're going to need in your RV. Now, as is typical with WeBoost, they've put together a pretty complete package for this whole setup to get it all up and running and hooked up in the RV, with all the extras and the right components. Now, there was one little piece that I think might be missing that I'll talk to you about that here in a minute. But this is a set of components that is really similar, almost identical to what I've been using for the last year in our RV, and it's performed exceptionally well. And it includes the obviously the Drive Reach booster, which is WeBoost's most powerful mobile booster right now, that surpasses even the Drive X, which is formerly the Drive 4GX. But it has a higher uplink power level, which allows it to reach a little bit further and access cell towers that are farther away. Paired with that is what was formerly the OTR, the trucker antenna, which they've redesigned this a little bit. So it was just round and now it's kind of hexagon shape. But it pretty much looks like the same deal. And it comes with an extension mast on it, which is this right here, and has the hardware to hook it up to a spring mount, and it goes like that. Also, it has the hardware to hook it up to a ladder or some sort of pole attachment. This has been a system that has worked very well for me, and I know other RVers using a similar setup with the OTR antenna paired with the Reach have had great results from this setup. Now, the internal antenna that sits inside the RV, it's the same tabletop mounted antenna that just sits there. Now, it's a very familiar antenna. We've had this with the last several WeBoost RV packages. They have all the additional pieces you might need to mount the cable and secure it to your roof or wherever. You get 30 feet of RG6 cable. And the nice thing about it is that it has the correct coax or cable connectors here on the end that work with the WeBoost Drive Reach. Now, one of the changes they made with the Reach is that they changed the port here from an SMA connection to an SMB connection. Now, it's a really cool It's a really cool connection because instead of screwing it on, instead of screwing it on, it just pushes in and snaps in place. So it's a nice setup, but most of the other boosters and cables and attachment had either the SMA, which is the screw-on kind, or the standard coax type connector. So you've had to get some sort of adapter to get it all hooked up, which is totally fine, but then you need all those extra pieces. But here's something that I think they might have left out. I'm not sure why. So in order to power the Reach, you get a AC power cord, and that plugs in to the power inlet here. But normally they would also include a 12 volt direct wire connector, so you could just wire it directly to a 12 volt battery source, but they didn't include that this time. They only include the AC power connector, so you have to be on AC power in order to fire up your booster. Now it looks like this. So here's the direct wire kit. This end plugs into the Reach or any other of their boosters, but it has a fuse and a positive and negative wire here that you can just connect to any 12 volt source. So that is something that I was surprised was left out of this kit, and I'm not sure why they did that. But you can buy these from WeBoost separately. Another thing I noticed about the mast of the antenna pieces that is different from previous ones is that they've taken the chrome pieces that would typically be like this piece and this piece, or the exposed metal and the threaded ends here, and they're all painted black now. So I don't know if that's, I mean, it looks nice, but I'm guessing it's to help prevent corrosion. So even this little side piece that screws in here is painted black, and all the threads are black. What I found interesting is that they didn't do the same thing for this spring mount, which I've actually noticed would develop a little bit of rust, the one that I have set up. So it would get a little bit of rust around the bottom. So when you're installing it, I would just squirt something on there to protect it and keep it from corroding. I asked WeBoost what the price of this package was going to be, and they said it was going to be $499, which is the same as the current RV package, the Drive X RV package. So it's typical for this package. And I mentioned before that we've had to piece together the components to kind of simulate or to get this type of setup for the RV with the Drive Reach. And you can kind of see one of the other distributors here. I've seen this in a few other places where people have put together a similar package called like the Drive Reach Extreme RV package that has pretty much the same components except a slightly different internal antenna, and it's priced at $689, for example, here. So the $499 all-inclusive package from WeBoost seems to be priced accordingly, and it seems to be a good deal. Well, connecting all this stuff together really is straightforward. It's not a whole lot to it. You're pretty much just connecting the antennas and powering up the WeBoost. So this is just going to be a temporary setup, but we'll do a quick test and I'll show you just at a really basic level how this all works. So I got my outside antenna here. I'm going to connect it to the outside antenna in. And the nice thing about these SMB connectors is that you just push them on. There's no threading or anything you need to worry about. So do the same thing with the internal antenna here. Just leave it coiled up we're going to leave this sitting right about here. And we'll plug that in to the other side. It says internal antenna. And there we go. Now it's just a matter of plugging in power. So we got our AC adapter that it came with. And we should see the little green light come on. That means we're all good. We have good separation between the antennas and that we're getting a good boost. I'm going to power this back off. We'll do a kind of a quick baseline measurement of our signal level on my phone here and do a quick speed test. And then we'll turn on the booster and we'll see how that improves. So we can see that we have a pretty poor signal right now in the 4G. And it's at negative 113. And we want to be somewhere below 100 if possible. But I don't know if we'll get there. This is typical for the signal here at our home. So that's the current signal level to the tower. Now let's do a quick speed test with my favorite Netflix speed test app. So we got 3.6 down. Okay, so the upload to start with is 3.2 and our download is 3.6 megabits per second. All right, so let's switch over to the mobile signal and we'll plug in our booster. Turn on that light. So that's a pretty significant jump from negative 113, 115 to negative 93. So we got in the green here, which is really, really good. So the signal improvement's going to definitely change based on your location, but that's what it is right now. Now if we do a speed test, let's just rerun that. See what kind of improvement we have here. It may actually be pretty close to the same. It's really hard to tell. All right, so we got a 4.4 megabits and 3.2 down. If we run this again, let's see if that improves. So yeah, there's a pretty significant jump in signal level, which is really what the booster is boosting. And you know, we noticed that the data upload and download speed stayed pretty close to the same. I'd hope to see a little bit more of a jump in benefit, but that's typical. You just don't know what's happening out on the internet. Like it's midday right now and we're in the heat of election coverage, so who knows? There's a lot of factors, just like there are a lot of factors that affect the signal level. So it's going to vary quite a bit depending upon your location and the time of day and the amount of activity out there. The issue with the power adapter, you know, I wish there was a direct DC line here. If you wanted to mount it permanently and have it connected to your batteries all the time, whoa, then that would probably be the best bet. I actually have mine mounted up here in the cabinet, and I have a switch over here that's 12-volt switch that I can turn it on and off from there, and I don't have to be running my inverter to provide AC power in order to run the booster. So I think that's a better setup if you're looking for a permanent install. Now, if you're interested in seeing more detailed test results in different remote locations using the Reach, I'm going to link to some other videos and articles that I wrote that cover that topic in more detail. So be sure to check those out if that's what you're interested in. But you know, we've been using this particular setup for the last year, and you know, depending upon the location, the benefits have been significant or kind of marginal. So it really depends on the conditions at the time. Well, here are some common questions that maybe you're asking. The first one is, where's the best place to mount the external antenna? Now, most folks will actually mount it on their ladder. That's a great place to mount it, and then you can even leave it on there permanently or take it down when you're not using it. Some folks might even mount a pole to the ladder that they can extend up and down when they're parked. Now, I've done something a little bit different on my RV. I installed something a little further back from the rear of the RV, and it's a marine mount that I can actually raise and lower the antenna. Other folks might just not even mount it at all until they're actually parked, and then they'll put it up, or maybe they have a pole or they'll mount something that gets it up high. What you really want to do is get it up as high as possible and as far away from the booster or the internal antenna as possible. You want that vertical and horizontal separation because you don't want any kind of feedback coming through the system, which will cause your booster here to get a little red light, which means that it's not giving you a good boosted signal because it's got some interference or some feedback there. So you want it to have a nice solid green light, which tells you that everything's working properly. Now the next question is, what's the best way to run the cable from the antenna on the outside to the booster on the inside? Now that's a tough one to answer because it's going to really depend on how much effort you want to put in to running the cable, from those 2 points. Like I said, the easiest way that a lot of people do it is they may not set it up until they're parked, and then they'll set up the external antenna, run the cable into the RV from there. Some folks will have a more permanent installation and run the cable from the antenna down through, say, a plumbing vent and into the RV, or maybe through your refrigerator vent and then through the back of the cavity behind your refrigerator and then into your RV. I'll have to say that the most complicated part of this whole process is actually figuring out where to run the cable. Now, something that they've included in other packages, which they don't have as part of this, but you can buy it on their website, is this little flat piece that connects in between 2 sections of cable. And what this allows you to do is actually slip this, inside the crack of a window or through the seal in one of your slides in the RV, so that gives you an easy way to get this into the RV, just temporarily while you're using it. So something to check out if you're interested. Look at that. It's pretty thin. Now this is a very common question because it's one of the issues that comes up a lot with these boosters. And the question is, how close to the internal antenna do I need to be to get the best signal? Now, the answer is as close as possible, if not right next to it. In order to prevent any interference or feedback from one antenna to the other, this internal antenna intentionally has a limited range. And for this one that sits on a tabletop, I think it's usually between 1 and 9 feet, something like that. But you'll find if you were to use it really close, you'll get the best signal. But even moving it away a foot, 3 feet, 5 feet, 9 feet, the signal starts to drop off very, very quickly. So a lot of people might complain that that's kind of a problem with this whole setup, but there is a reason for it. So the answer is right next to it. What we tend to do is set up a mobile hotspot, and then we mount it right by this antenna, and it gives us the best and the strongest signal. Can I use a pole-mounted directional antenna with the Drive Reach? So some antennas, unlike these are omnidirectional. So they listen and they pick up signals from 360 degrees. But if you used a directional antenna, it's called a Yagi antenna, it's kind of a wedge-shaped antenna, and point it directly at the cell tower, you're going to get a better signal that way, at a very strong signal. But that's typically something that we'll set up if you're staying somewhere for a long period of time or you have a permanent installation. It's quite common to mount a directional antenna on a pole and get it up as high as possible, pointed directly at the cell tower that you're trying to target. And that's really going to give you the best signal from this booster. But for a mobile application, it's not as common. But yes, it is possible with the Drive Reach. The only drawback is that you may have to get some additional adapters and cable adapters to be able to connect it to the same cables and get it hooked up to the Reach. Okay, now people ask, can I drive with the antenna in the up position? And the answer is sure, but it really depends upon how you have it set up. Now, if you have just the antenna mounted like this with this piece on the bottom here with the cable fed out like that, and a cable runs somewhere, and it's not sticking up too far, you're probably safe to drive like that with it just sticking up on your roof. It doesn't have that much height to it. But once you add this mast to it, it adds, and the spring mount like that, it adds about 20 inches of height, and it really sticks up pretty high. So I wouldn't drive with it like that, even if it has the spring mount on it. So use your best judgment. Like I said, in my system, I have a way to lower the antenna while I'm driving, and then I raise it back up once I'm parked. Now, a lot of folks ask, can I use the Drive Reach or any of these boosters in my fifth wheel or trailer and also use it in my tow vehicle, in my truck? Now, the answer is yes, but it depends on how you have things mounted in your fifth wheel or trailer. If you have more of a permanent setup for your antenna, then it's going to be more difficult, obviously, to move it around. In either case, you're going to have to be able to disconnect the booster itself and take it out and plug it in to your vehicle. And obviously for that situation, you're going to need one of those cigarette lighter DC plug-in adapters, one of the little magnetic mount antennas that would plug just in here instead of your large RV antenna. Use those antennas in your car and use the larger, higher gain antennas like this in your trailer or fifth wheel. So yeah, it's totally doable. You just might have to get a couple of extra pieces so that you don't have to always be moving things back and forth when you're driving or parked. Now, this final question has to do with 5G, and people are asking, will the booster work with 5G? Now, I wanted to get the right answer here because these boosters are actually 4G LTE boosters, and those are the bands that they primarily are used to boost. But I reached out to WeBoost just to make sure I was giving you the right answer to this, and here's what they said. So I said, will the WeBoost work with 5G? And the answer is yes. Our current WeBoost product line will work in a 5G world. Carriers will continue to rely on the 4G LTE network to provide service for the majority of subscribers well into 2030 and beyond. But note that currently we are not boosting wave, which is the primary band that the 5G networks are running on. So you have to be really close to those antennas, and there have to be a lot more of those antennas. So that's the official answer from WeBoost right now, is that you're going to be good to go with any of their boosters in a 5G world. So I hope this information that I shared here with these questions and with this Reach setup helps you out, helps answer some questions to help you decide what's right for you. But if you have questions and comments and just thoughts in general, feel free to drop them below. And if you want to save a few bucks on one of these packages or any of the WeBoost boosters, then check the description. I'll share more information there on how you can do that. So take care, and I'll see you in the next video.